What is going on, football fans? Back at it with another New York Giants video. And in this video, I'm going to talk about a story that came out earlier today from Paul Schwartz of the New York Post. Also was posted on GiantsWire.com regarding the injury to Daniel Jones and why it may be a lot more serious than some of us may have initially thought. When the injury first came out, the New York Giants, it seemed like were trying to downplay the injury, and maybe they were just waiting until they got further details from the medical staff of how severe this injury may be. They still have not even put Daniel Jones on the IR, and you've seen Daniel Jones in practice with a helmet on, moving his head from side to side. Of course, he has not been cleared for contact, and I'll get into some of the quotes today that came out from Joe Judge. But what was so interesting about the article that came out today from Schwartz, and I would have to think Paul Schwartz, who's been writing for the New York Post for years, would not just say this unless he knew that. The question is, when did the New York Giants know it? But I'll give my full opinion on all of it throughout this video. But regardless, this is certainly not encouraging news for Daniel Jones. Not just for this year, but whenever you hear about structural damage to a neck, especially as Giants fans, we should know this better than anybody. With David Wilson early on in his career, you worry about the worst. Not that I'm trying to tell people that I expect that, but it's certainly not great news when you start to hear that there's structural damage to a neck. You have to worry about much more severe injuries in the future and whether or not Daniel Jones could get back on the football field sooner than later. And it's something that the Giants in the offseason, if Jones is not able to come back this year, that they will have to consider at the quarterback position long term. Whether or not you like to hear that if you're a Daniel Jones fan or not, that's just clear facts. I mean, at the end of the day, Daniel Jones, if he misses the remainder of this season, will have missed 10 games in just 3 seasons. So regardless about his play on the field in terms of the offensive line and the help around him, it is certainly a big, big red flag, all the injuries that he sustained, and now you talk about structural damage to his neck. And I hate talking about this as a New York Giants fan. Nobody wants Daniel Jones, as I've said in my previous video, to succeed more than me. But sometimes you got to err on the side of caution. Let's get into some of the quotes that came out today from the New York Post article. First thing was this being Joe Judge talking about Daniel Jones. In terms of the updates right now, he still hasn't been cleared for contact. Head coach Joe Judge told reporters on Wednesday he'll continue to go through practice like he did last week. He'll throw with the team, he'll move. He's in all of the meetings. We'll see if anything changes in terms of his status, but he has not been cleared for contact. And of course, like I said, I don't expect Jones to play this week. I don't expect him to play next week. As a matter of fact, at this point, I am not expecting to see Daniel Jones start for the New York Giants for the rest of the year. That's at least my expectations. Maybe things will change. Then went on to say there's not an immediate timeline. This could change quickly. It could change over time. Talking to the doctors and the medical team, there are some things that they're just waiting on in terms of just making sure that he's cleared for contact. When it comes to necks, backs, things of that nature, we're not going to take any risks with our players. And nor should they. A neck injury is very serious. We've seen, I remember when Peyton Manning came back, people were saying that may be a mistake when he had that severe neck injury. And that's something that you certainly don't play with if you're a football team. Now, the one thing I will criticize what the Giants have done in the past and how they've handled Daniel Jones, I think we all agree last year they probably brought him back at least a week earlier than they should have with the injury. He didn't look near himself against the Arizona Cardinals. And you could certainly argue that they rushed him back from the concussion that he suffered against the Dallas Cowboys. I know word came out that he didn't officially have a concussion, but the way the guy wobbled to the ground certainly gave you some doubts as a New York Giants fan whether he was 100% himself, and then he went on to throw 3 interceptions the next week against the Rams. This, then, is the interesting piece of the article and the new information, at least to me, coming out from Paul Schwartz. And like I said, I'm going to trust Paul Schwartz. This is a guy that has been writing for the New York Post for, I would assume, over a decade. He's been there for a long time. He is not going to risk his reputation saying something like this. I'll give my full thoughts on all of it after I read it. Jones had his neck checked in Los Angeles on Monday, traveling with Ronnie Barnes, the Giants' senior vice president of medical services, to see neck specialist Dr. Robert Watkins. The concern is that if Jones plays, he could do further damage to the neck, which suffered some structural damage in the loss in Tampa in Week 11. So when we heard about this injury, it was after the Eagles game, and you didn't hear anything about it during the game, and, he went out there after the Tampa game, and as you read right there, suffered some structural damage in the loss to Tampa, Week 11. Well, he played in the win against the Philadelphia Eagles. We all remember the hit that he took. If you go back and watch some of the video clips some of my subscribers posted on Twitter, you see a hit that he took to his neck against the Bucs as well. The question I have as a New York Giants fan is, did the New York Giants know that he was having some issues with his neck and let him go out there and play against the Philadelphia Eagles? Or did Daniel Jones not say anything, and then after the Eagles game felt more pain and reported it to the team and said that he started to feel at least a little bit of pain against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers? If that is the case, of course, you can't put that so much on the medical staff. They don't know unless the player tells them that he's hurting. But if they knew and they allowed him to go back out there and play, even if it was a little bit of damage to the neck, that is a huge, huge, huge problem with this medical staff and the way that they've handled this injury. I am going to think optimistically and think that Daniel Jones did not tell them anything until after the Eagles game, and then when he talked to doctors, said that he started to feel some pain after that Tampa Bay Bucs game. Both of these plays, when you look at the film, they're on Jones in terms of why he got hurt. There's no denying it. Both plays, Daniel Jones clearly did not try to get out of harm's way. He took on tacklers. This has been a reoccurring theme with Daniel Jones this entire year. And we could talk about how bad the offensive line is, and it is. And we could talk about how they shouldn't run Daniel Jones. At the end of the day, Daniel Jones, when he rolls out of the pocket, he has to learn as a quarterback in the NFL that you have to get down before you take shots to your head. Because if he doesn't, even if he's cleared to play, this is going to continue to happen. Daniel Jones now has missed time in 3 different years, all when he was running. It wasn't in the pocket. When he takes off and run, that has nothing to do with the offensive line. Now, you could certainly say that maybe he feels like he has to run more due to the fact that they can't establish a ground game and they don't give him enough time to throw the football. But regardless, that's a major issue. The other thing I will say, if the New York Giants had any awareness of this neck injury, and you would like to think when they watch over the film, they would at least check him if you saw a hit like he took against the Tampa Bay Bucs. But if they had any awareness of this, why in the world would you call 7 or 8 running plays like you did against the Philadelphia Eagles? A lot of those runs occurring up the middle, not even going to the sideline when he could try to get out of harm's way. Regardless, obviously, my hopes, thoughts, and prayers are going out to Daniel Jones. I hope this is not anything that is going to threaten the longevity of his career with the New York Giants or wherever else he may end up after he leaves the New York Giants, if he is not going to be the long-term answer here. But yes, at this point in time, if you're the New York Giants, you have to think clear. You cannot think like a fan. You cannot get emotionally attached to these players. If he misses the rest of this year, and I will wait to give my final analysis on this until the end of the year and hear how they handle this and hear how bad this injury may be. But the fact of the matter is, if he misses the rest of this year, you're talking about a guy that has missed almost a season's worth of games at the quarterback position just 3 years into his career. Regardless of who you want to blame it on, that is not good, especially for a quarterback that does not have many wins to his name to begin with. Giants are going to have to think long-term at the quarterback position. The question is, how are they going to go about doing it? I've come out and said that I think the Giants have to be patient in terms of not trying to force a quarterback pick. And I still feel that way. However, an injury like this could force the New York Giants' hand. That doesn't mean that you got to draft a quarterback. You could sign a stopgap, similar to a guy like Bridgewater, if Jones is not 100%. And regardless, even if they deem that Daniel Jones is going to be 100% recovered and they feel he could be the starting quarterback going into next year, like I've said several times, there is no doubt in my mind, they need to get a much more qualified backup. Because at the end of the day, there is a pattern here. He has missed time each of the last 3 seasons, and guys like Mike Glennon and Colt McCoy with the team that we have provided are not going to cut it. New York Giants, if they stick with Jones next year, if he can play, they're going to need a much more qualified backup. But we'll see what they do in the offseason. Obviously, my initial thought process is you hope that this is not something that alters the time frame of Daniel Jones' career. I'm not going to flip out. We'll wait to hear more about the injury throughout the rest of the season and the offseason. I'm sure it'll be a storyline. But, yeah, not good that he already had somewhat of a neck injury going into that Eagles game before he took another hit. And the fact that he looks completely fine and they're still erring on the side of caution leads you to believe that the doctors think that this could be a lot more serious than we may have initially thought. As always, guys, if you liked what you watched, please subscribe. Drop a comment. Maybe give me a little thumbs up. Cheers.